All right, could you shed some light on this? Because, I mean, I need to understand the principle. Why do we borrow to pay salaries? I thought we should borrow to perhaps finance infrastructure development.
Absolutely. And that's what we are now trying to do. To get all the revenues of government in, we must not be borrowing. We've been borrowing to pay salaries for years, by the way.
Wow.
Yes. And the reason is that revenue is leaking. And that's one of the things that I am very passionate about sorting out. Let me explain this. At the moment, there are really only 3 lines of government, federal government revenue that we account for. So that's the money that comes in from oil, taxes from the inland revenue, federal inland revenue, and customs. All the other revenues of government sit in boards and corporations. And most of them have not been remitting any money into the Federation account. This, for me, is part of the indiscipline that oil gave us. If we didn't have oil, wouldn't we ask, the money I paid for my passport, does it go to the government? The money I paid for, or I paid to NAFDAC for argument's sake for my registration, is it going to the government? What's happening to that money? There was no accountability in all those agencies. And that's one of the big changes of this government. That's the non-oil revenue. That's the revenue that whether oil is high or low is pretty stable. And we are making, we have very serious plan about enforcing the Fiscal Responsibility Act, making those agencies accountable. That money you collect is government money and it must be accounted for. But when you leave an agency, the same agency that's collecting the revenue determines how much they spend.
But we have some people complaining about the TSA. ASU, for instance, say, look, they want to be exempted because it's hampering productivity in the union.
Who?
ASU, Academic Staff Union of
Okay.
Universities.
Now the universities, some of them, and we have a dialogue going on with them. The issue with ASU is there are some universities that have what they call foundation accounts. They're trust accounts, and they just live on the interest. So TSA doesn't actually pay them any interest. So they're saying, look, we live on the interest of this money. If TSA is not going to pay us interest, let us have an exemption. And we're working with them, with the CBN, to have certain categories of account, either to be able to be interest bearing through the TSA or to allow them an exemption. That's really their issue. And it's something that we have engaged with, not with ASU, but with the universities on.
You know, in all of this, you also talked about trying to cut costs.
Yes.
What are you doing in that regard? Because if you say a whole lot of leakages, and we also talked about the ghost workers, the question Nigerians are asking is it that the government is handicapped in trying to fix or block all of those leakages and loopholes? They put the blame on government and even political office holders. Do you think is something that your ministry and maybe that of budget can really fight?
Absolutely. We can and we must. That is the key fight for the future of the Nigerian economy. We can't afford to waste money the way we've been wasting money in the past. Let me give you, for me, which was a very shocking statistic. So last year, for the whole year, we spent 19 billion naira on roads for the entire federation. But we spent 64 billion naira on travel. We spent 19 billion on roads, 64 billion naira on travel. So we set up an efficiency unit and we're looking at those expenses. Why are we traveling? How are we traveling? What's it costing us to travel? And we've issued guidelines now. So for example, there's a circular that went out. It's not a popular circular, but we really don't care. You cannot travel first class on government money. You cannot travel even business class unless you're a minister or permanent secretary. Everybody else should go economy. You're traveling for government business. Why should you travel business class? We're wasting money. The other thing we've done, our efficiency unit, is we've started to negotiate now with the airlines. We've called them in. We said, look how much money, look how much business government did with you. Can we get a discount? And they're giving us discounts. In fact, in one case, we have discounts of 50%. Those are going to be huge savings that will be ploughed back into the right areas, the things we should be spending money on. You know, the roads. I can see the shock on your face. I was shocked when I found out as well. How can an economy grow if you don't invest in the right things, if you allow money to just leak?
I saw one of the things in the efficiency unit, even though I tried to open it on your website and it just wasn't going through.
We'll sort that out.
Yes, but I did see that you intend to introduce ministerial debit cards.
Yes.
How is that supposed to work?
The idea is, what we've discovered is every time there's cash, money leaks, you lose accountability. And so we looked at what exactly is this money being spent on. Fueling cars, paying for airline tickets, all these things can be paid with a debit card. So we issue a debit card that is, say, Ministry of Finance. We issue 20, 30 of them. We know who is spending it, what you're spending on. Then we can trend. Then we can say, look, why are you buying a full tank of fuel every day? Where did you travel to? Right? Once you give somebody cash, you lose control over what they spent the money on. So we're trying to drive out cash, move everybody onto a cashless platform so that we have more accountability.
Is it in place now?
No, we're piloting it. 3 banks have given us prototypes, and we're going to do the learning, make sure it works properly, and then we're going to roll it out.
What kind of what kind of coordination is going to be between your ministry and that of the CBN? Because people talk about, yes, they can, CBN handles the monetary policy, but the fiscal policy, it should be your purview.
Yes, it is our purview. So we have an alignment. We have made it very clear that we are running an expansionary fiscal policy. We have to stimulate this economy by spending. And the central bank are running the monetary policies, the exchange rate, the interest rate, and so on. And I think you saw the interest rate go up recently to cool down inflation. So there's handshake.
Which is usually where a lot of people have trouble. You know, people say that the finance ministry is trying to reflate the economy, or usually tries to reflate the economy by spending. And then on the other hand, you find the CBN, you know, taking it back, you will say, with rising cost of borrowing money. Manufacturers are groaning underneath the weight of, you know, some of the policies of government. Are you aware of some of their complaints, and what are you doing about it?
I am. Let me just address your question around the monetary policy, the impact of the monetary policy on the government's fiscal plans. We are borrowing, but we have said from the beginning that we will only try and borrow 50% of what we need in the domestic market, because we need to allow room for the private sector. We don't want to crowd them out. We think it's too easy for banks to lend to government. We want the banks to go out and lend to the real sector. So we don't want to be competing with the private sector. So once we come out, and that's why you see us out on the road talking to foreign lenders, trying to borrow money in the foreign markets, so that banks are forced to go and lend to the real sector, and that should put a downward pressure on the interest rates.
So if you go to the foreign lenders and they say, well, you have to devalue before we give you money, will you walk away?
No, it doesn't. They don't say that. They don't.
What
You're borrowing in foreign currency and you're paying
If you
in foreign currency.
if you meet your lenders, and that's what the condition is.
No, but what I'm saying is, why would that be their condition? Because they are lending to you in dollars, and you are going to pay back in dollars. So the connection between your currency and theirs doesn't affect them. They are getting their money back in dollars. So they're not implying, they're not imposing or suggesting those type of conditions.
What if we're going to the Bretton Woods institution, which is where a lot of people have issues? I mean, the IMF, World Bank, they have been singing on top of their voices, devalue, devalue, devalue. You don't think that those kinds of conditions could arise?
Let me clarify the IMF's role. The IMF, because there's a lot of misunderstanding about the IMF. We're not in an IMF program. It's only when you're in an IMF program that they can impose certain conditions on you. IMF is when you have a balance of payments problem, okay, and then they become the lender of last resort. We are not in an IMF program. So IMF has 3 roles. They do what they call surveillance, and they issue what is called the Article 4 report. They do that on every country, by the way, and that's the report they issued. It's done annually. So they have, as part of their work, is to advise. And we have come back and said, these are our plans. These are our solutions that we're working through. We think the Nigerian economy is in transition. We need some time to understand what are the factors, where is the Nigerian economy going, what's its potential, what's its size. You know, I gave you an example now about revenue, and the truth is, nobody really knows what the true revenue of government is. By the time we're going around, which is what we're doing with all these agencies that I mentioned, we're trying to understand what is your revenue.
Isn't that because we don't have an economic team? Do we have?
We have an economic team.
We don't know them.
We had an economic team before, and people didn't know how much was being collected.
But we knew the members. But for this one, I don't know the members of your economic team.
You don't know the ministers that are charged with the economy. You don't know the vice president. You don't know myself. You don't know the minister for budget, the 2 ministers in budget and national planning. You don't know the minister for trade and investment. You know the economic team, and it's a very competent team at that, and a hard-working team that are going to turn this economy around.
It will shock you that Nigerians don't know about the existence of an economic team.
They don't know the existence of an economic...
In this present administration.
What do you define as an economic team?
The team.
No, I'm telling you that Nigerians...
Are you talking about they don't know the ministers that are charged with the...
It's not about the ministers.
Ah, right, okay.
There must be an economic team, and off the top of your head, you can tell who members were in the last economic team, but in this economic team, that you say is inexistent, Nigerians are unaware of its existence.
Now, who are the economic team you are referring to in the past? Is that the council that has the external, the private sector? Is that the group you're referring to?
Not that council. I mean, there was a team responsible, or there should be a team responsible for economic coordination.
Right.
Which is why I think in the last administration we had the Minister of Finance, who was also the coordinating Minister of the Economy,
right.
because she needs to be able to get, or you need to be able to get people, you know, to be on the same page as you are on, especially in the areas that affect the economy directly.
There is an economic team. It is chaired and managed by the Vice President. I'm a member. The Minister of Budget and Planning is a member. The Minister of State Budget and Planning is a member. The Minister of Trade and Investment is a member. The Minister of Information is a member. Other ministers and heads of the head of the DMO is a member. The DG budgets are members. So there is a team. It's just a different structure than having a CME, a coordinating Minister of the Economy. Because remember that under the CME system, budget was under finance. Budget has now moved to national planning. So we're running a slightly different structure.